Billionaire CEO divorced his wife, but he didn't know she was pregnant. Few months later, she gave birth to triplets. Were you ever going to tell me? Violet's hands trembled as she faced the man who'd once called her defective. Alexander Sterling stood in her office doorway, his face pale with shock, his gray eyes blazing with an emotion she couldn't quite name. Tell you what, exactly? Don't play games with me, Violet. Those children in your waiting room, the 3 kids with my eyes, my face, my everything. Were you ever going to tell me I'm their father? The silence between them crackled with 5 years of secrets and lies. You gave up the right to know about them when you threw me away like damaged goods. When you called me barren and replaced me with someone whose womb actually worked. Alexander's voice broke. They're 5 years old. 5 years, Violet. 5 birthdays. 5 first days of school. 5 years of bedtime stories and scraped knees and everything that matters. How could you keep them from me? How could you? Violet's fury finally exploded. How could you destroy our marriage because I couldn't get pregnant fast enough, only for me to discover I was carrying your triplets 2 weeks after you signed our divorce papers? How could you marry Vivian while I was throwing up every morning with your children? How could you build your perfect life while I was giving birth 6 weeks premature? Alone, terrified, with 3 tiny babies fighting for their lives? Alexander staggered backward as if she'd physically struck him. You were pregnant. When we divorced, you were already pregnant. And you were already engaged to someone else. So tell me, Alexander, what exactly did you want me to do? Come crawling back to the man who called me an error that needed correcting? Beg you to acknowledge the children you claimed I could never give you? I would have wanted to know. I had a right to know. Violet's laugh was sharp and bitter. You had a right to know when you were my husband, and we were building a life together. You lost that right the second you chose your precious Sterling legacy over the woman who loved you more than anything in this world. Have you ever been in a room where the air itself feels explosive, where one wrong word could detonate years of buried pain and transform lives forever? Stay with me, because this is the story of a woman who was thrown away for being broken, only to become everything her ex-husband needed. A story about 3 children who grew up without their father, while their mother built an empire from nothing. And a story about whether love can survive the ultimate betrayal, or if some mistakes are simply too devastating to forgive. If you believe in second chances, or if you've ever had to rebuild yourself after someone shattered your heart, hit that like button right now, because what you're about to hear will challenge everything you think you know about forgiveness, redemption, and the true meaning of family. But to understand how we got to this explosive moment, we need to go back 5 years. Back to when Violet Monroe believed in fairy tales and Alexander Sterling seemed like her happily ever after. Back to the night everything fell apart. 5 years earlier, the penthouse overlooked Central Park like a throne room surveying its kingdom. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed Manhattan's glittering skyline, each light representing dreams and ambitions, victories and defeats. The apartment screamed wealth in that particular way only old money could achieve. Understated, elegant, coldly perfect. Violet Monroe Sterling sat on the white Italian leather sofa, staring at the negative pregnancy test in her hands. The 23rd negative test in 3 years of marriage. She'd stopped counting after the first dozen, but her mind kept a ruthless tally anyway. 23 failures. 23 months of hope dying in a bathroom at 3 in the morning. The sound of Alexander's footsteps on the marble floor made her stomach clench. She knew that particular rhythm. Purposeful, determined. The walk of a man who'd made a decision and was ready to execute it. Another negative. His voice came from the doorway. Not quite a question. Violet didn't look up from the test. The doctor said my hormone levels are improving. The new treatment protocol is showing promise. We just need to give it more time. Time. Alexander moved into the room, and Violet finally raised her eyes to meet his. At 35, her husband was devastating. 6'2", perfectly tailored Armani suit, the kind of bone structure that made people assume he'd been born knowing his own worth. Gray eyes that could cut through corporate boardrooms and quarterly reports with equal precision. Those same eyes now looked at her with something worse than anger. Resignation. It's been 3 years, Violet. 3 years of specialists and treatments and procedures. 3 years of hoping next month will be different. Maybe it's time we accept reality. What reality? Her voice came out smaller than she intended. Alexander poured himself a scotch from the bar cart, the crystal decanter catching the city lights. He took a long drink before answering. That you can't give me what I need." The words landed like a slap. Violet stood up, the pregnancy test falling from her hands to the pristine white carpet. "What you need. Not what we need. What you need. I need an heir, Violet. My grandfather built Sterling Global from nothing. My father expanded it into $1 billion empire. I'm the CEO at 35, the youngest in company history, and I have no one to leave it to. No legacy, no future beyond my own lifespan. So I'm a failure because I can't manufacture your legacy on demand. You're not a failure." Alexander's tone shifted to something almost gentle, which somehow made it worse. "You're a brilliant architect. Your sustainable housing project won awards. Your designs are innovative and thoughtful. You're just not able to be the wife I need. The wife you need." Violet felt something breaking inside her chest, something fundamental and irreparable. "Not the woman you love, the wife you need. Love isn't enough." He set down his glass with careful precision. "Love doesn't continue the Sterling family line. Love doesn't satisfy the board of directors who want assurance of stable succession. Love doesn't give me children. I'm not a brood mare, Alexander. I'm your wife, the woman you promised to love in sickness and in health." Or did those vows come with fine print about reproductive performance? My grandmother was right. Alexander moved to the window, his back to her. "I should have married someone from our world, someone with proven family genetics. Your grandmother has hated me from day one." Violet's voice rose with hurt and fury. "Because my father was a high school teacher, because my mother was a nurse, because I don't have a trust fund or a pedigree or whatever the hell qualifies as acceptable in your world, because you can't do the one job that actually matters." The cruelty of it stole her breath. Violet stared at her husband's back, at the rigid set of his shoulders, and realized she was looking at a stranger. "What happened to you?" "The man I married told me I was enough exactly as I am. He said we'd face everything together. He held me when I cried after each miscarriage and promised it would happen when the time was right. That man was naive." Alexander turned to face her, and his eyes were cold as winter steel. That man didn't understand the weight of responsibility, the pressure of legacy, the reality that some things matter more than temporary emotions. Temporary emotions. Our marriage is temporary emotions. Our marriage was a mistake. The words fell like an executioner's blade. I chose passion over practicality. I chose the woman who made me feel alive over the woman who could give me the future I need. And now I'm correcting that error. Violet felt the room tilting around her. "What are you saying?" Alexander walked to his desk and retrieved a manila folder. He set it on the coffee table between them with the same care he'd use for a business contract. "I'm saying Vivian Cross is pregnant, 12 weeks along. The board has already been informed, and they're thrilled about the stability it provides for the company's future." The room spun. Vivian Cross, Sterling Global's VP of Acquisitions, from the prestigious Cross family of Boston. Exactly the kind of woman Alexander's grandmother had wanted him to marry from the beginning. "You're having an affair. I'm securing my legacy." Alexander's face remained impassive, as if they were discussing a merger rather than the destruction of their marriage. "Vivian comes from excellent stock. Her mother had 5 children with no complications. Her medical history shows no fertility issues. She's everything a Sterling wife should be. And what am I? A beautiful, talented woman who deserves someone who can love her without needing her to be something she's not. How generous of you." Violet's laugh came out broken, jagged. "You're destroying our marriage, and you're framing it as a gift. The divorce papers are in that folder." Alexander gestured to the manila envelope. "My lawyers have prepared a very generous settlement. You'll receive $10 million, the Soho loft, and connections that will help you start your own architecture firm. I'm not trying to hurt you, Violet. I'm trying to give us both what we need, what I need." She grabbed the folder and threw it across the room, papers scattering like broken promises. "What I need is my husband to actually mean his wedding vows. What I need is to not be reduced to my reproductive system. What I need is to not be replaced like a broken appliance. You're being emotional. I'm being human." Violet moved toward him, searching his face for any crack in the corporate facade. "Alexander, please. We can try other options. Adoption, surrogacy. There are so many ways to build a family. I don't want those options." His voice was final. "I want biological children born from my wife. Children who carry Sterling blood. Vivian can give me that. You can't. It's that simple. Simple." 3 years of marriage reduced to simple math. The divorce will be finalized quietly and quickly. Alexander continued in that same business-like tone. I'll have my publicist draft an announcement about our amicable separation due to irreconcilable differences. Your reputation will remain intact. My reputation. Violet tasted the word like poison. What about my heart? What about the 3 years I spent loving you, supporting you, believing we were building something real? Those years weren't wasted. You grew as an architect. You made valuable connections. You learned about the world I live in. I learned that the world you live in is heartless and cruel, that money and legacy matter more than love, that I was never actually your partner, just an experiment in slumming it with someone outside your social class. Alexander's jaw tightened, the first real emotion breaking through. That's not fair. Fair? Violet's voice climbed with hysteria. You want to talk about fair? You're divorcing me because my body won't perform on your timeline while your mistress carries your child. Where exactly is the fairness in that? Vivian isn't my mistress. She's going to be my wife. The announcement will go out next month, after the divorce is final. Next month. The timeline clicked into place in Violet's mind. You've had this planned for weeks, maybe months. While I was going to appointments, taking hormones, putting my body through hell, trying to give you what you wanted, you were already planning my replacement. I was planning for the future of my company. Your company. Always your company. Violet grabbed her purse and jacket from the chair. Tell me something, Alexander. When you're 90 years old and sitting in this sterile museum you call a home, surrounded by heirs, who were manufactured to specification, will you remember that you once had something real? That you once had a woman who loved you for who you were, not what you could provide? I'll remember that I made the right choice for Sterling Global. Then I hope Sterling Global keeps you warm at night. Violet walked toward the door on shaking legs. Behind her, Alexander's voice followed. You can stay in the penthouse until the paperwork is finalized. There's no need to rush. She turned back one last time, memorizing his face. The sharp cheekbones, the gray eyes, the mouth that had once whispered promises against her skin. I don't want to spend another second in this mausoleum. I'll have my things picked up this week. Violet, don't. Her voice broke. Don't say my name like you care. Don't pretend this is difficult for you. You've already moved on, Alexander. You moved on weeks ago when you decided Vivian's womb was more valuable than my heart. I never meant to hurt you, but you did it anyway. And that's somehow worse. She left the penthouse and didn't look back. The elevator ride down 52 floors felt like descending through layers of her own shattered dreams. The doorman, who'd greeted her warmly for 3 years, couldn't meet her eyes. He knew. They all knew. Outside, Manhattan gleamed with autumn rain. Violet stood on the sidewalk in front of the building she'd called home, letting the cold water soak through her jacket. Around her, the city moved with relentless purpose. Taxis splashed through puddles. Pedestrians rushed past with umbrellas. The world continued spinning as if hers hadn't just ended. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and called the only person who would understand. Mom. Her voice cracked. Can I come home? Her mother's apartment in Brooklyn was small and warm, and everything the penthouse wasn't. Floral prints on the sofa, photos covering every surface, the smell of cinnamon and coffee, real life instead of sterile perfection. Helen Monroe took one look at her daughter's face and pulled her into a fierce hug. What did he do? The whole story poured out between sobs. 3 years of trying for children, the diagnosis, the treatments, Alexander's coldness, Vivian's pregnancy, the divorce papers, every devastating detail. That absolute bastard. Helen's voice shook with fury. That spoiled, entitled, heartless bastard. He said I was an error that needed correcting. You are not an error. Helen gripped her daughter's shoulders. You are brilliant and talented and worth 10 of Alexander Sterling. His loss, baby girl. His enormous, tragic loss. Then why does it feel like I'm the one who lost everything? Because you loved him. Because you gave him everything you had and he threw it away. But you listen to me, Violet. You're going to survive this. You're going to rebuild. And someday, he's going to realize what he destroyed. Violet wanted to believe her mother. Wanted to imagine a future where the pain wasn't crushing her chest. But that night, curled in her childhood bed, all she could feel was the gaping hole where her life used to be. 3 weeks later, Violet signed the divorce papers in a lawyer's office in Midtown. Alexander didn't attend. He sent his attorney, a sharp-eyed woman in Chanel who presented the settlement papers with professional efficiency. $10 million. The Soho loft. A glowing recommendation letter for any architecture position she might seek. Everything calculated to buy her silence and cooperation. Violet signed her name with a hand that had stopped shaking. She was done crying, done hoping, done believing in fairy tales. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday. By Friday, Page 6 ran the announcement. Billionaire CEO Alexander Sterling and wife Violet separate amicably. The Sterling family wishes her well in her future endeavors. Amicably, as if her heart hadn't been carved out of her chest. The following Monday, Alexander and Vivian's engagement was announced. The photo showed them at some charity gala, Vivian's hand strategically placed to show off an enormous diamond while hiding her growing baby bump. They looked perfect together. Two beautiful people from the right families with the right credentials. Violet stared at the photo until the faces blurred. That Friday morning, she woke up nauseated. She blamed it on stress, on heartbreak, on the fact that she'd barely eaten in 2 weeks. By Saturday, when the nausea continued, a terrible suspicion began forming. No, it wasn't possible. They'd tried for 3 years with no success. The doctors had said her endometriosis made pregnancy unlikely. The timing was impossible. Sunday morning, Violet bought 3 pregnancy tests from 3 different pharmacies, took them all in her mother's tiny bathroom, waited the endless 3 minutes that felt like 3 hours. All 3 showed the same impossible result. Pregnant. She stared at the positive tests, her mind unable to process what her eyes were seeing. This couldn't be happening. After 3 years of trying, countless treatments, devastating disappointments, and a divorce based entirely on her inability to conceive, she was pregnant. Mom. Her voice came out as a whisper. Mom, I need you. Helen found her daughter sitting on the bathroom floor, surrounded by positive pregnancy tests, tears streaming down her face. Oh, honey. Oh, my sweet girl. I'm pregnant. Violet's voice shook with disbelief and terror. 3 years of nothing, and now, 2 weeks after he divorces me for being barren, I'm pregnant. Does he know? No. And he's not going to. Violet's hands moved protectively to her still flat stomach. He made his choice. He chose Vivian and her perfect womb and his precious legacy. He doesn't get to know that the defective wife actually could give him what he wanted. Violet, he has a right to know if he's going to be a father. He gave up that right when he called me an error that needed correcting. Violet stood up, her decision crystallizing with absolute clarity. I'm keeping this baby. I'm going to raise it myself. And Alexander Sterling is never going to know it exists. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. This is my child. Mine. Not his. Not the Sterling legacies. Mine. Helen pulled her daughter close. Then we'll do this together. You and me, and this baby, against the world. Violet closed her eyes and let herself feel a flicker of hope. She'd lost everything. Her marriage, her home, her belief in love. But maybe, just maybe, she was about to gain something infinitely more precious. She just didn't know yet that she wasn't carrying 1 baby. She was carrying 3. The first ultrasound happened 4 weeks after the divorce papers were signed. Violet lay on the examination table in a small clinic in Brooklyn, as far from the Upper East Side specialist she and Alexander had visited as possible. She couldn't risk running into anyone from that world. Couldn't risk the news getting back to him. The ultrasound technician, a kind woman named Rosa, spread cold gel across Violet's abdomen. Let's see what we've got here. The wand pressed against her skin. The monitor flickered with grainy black and white images that meant nothing to Violet's untrained eye. Then Rosa's hands stilled. Well, that's unexpected. What? Is something wrong? Panic seized Violet's chest. Nothing's wrong. Rosa's smile grew wider. But you're going to need a bigger apartment. Congratulations, Mama. You're having triplets. The room tilted. Violet stared at the monitor, at the 3 distinct, tiny shapes Rosa was pointing to. That's impossible. I was told I had a less than 5% chance of getting pregnant at all. Sometimes the universe has a sense of humor. Rosa squeezed her hand. 3 healthy heartbeats, strong and steady. You've got 3 fighters in there, 3 babies, 3 children. The man who divorced her for being unable to conceive had unknowingly given her triplets. The irony was so devastating, Violet started laughing. And once she started, She couldn't stop. She laughed until tears streamed down her face, laughed at the cosmic joke of it all, laughed at Alexander's face when he'd called her barren, laughed at Vivian's pregnancy announcement, laughed because the alternative was screaming. "Honey, are you okay?" Rosa looked concerned. "I'm perfect." Violet wiped her eyes. "I'm absolutely perfect. 3 babies. 3 miracles that my ex-husband will never know about. Is the father not involved? The father is marrying someone else because he thought I couldn't give him children. So no, he's definitely not involved. Then he's an idiot." Rosa printed out ultrasound photos and handed them to Violet. "These 3 are going to be amazing. I can already tell." Violet stared at the grainy images. 3 tiny shapes that would become 3 tiny humans. 3 children who would never know their father thought their mother was defective. "Thank you." She pressed the photos to her chest. "Thank you for the good news." Outside the clinic, Violet called her mother. "Mom, you're going to need that bigger apartment." "Why?" "Because it's not 1 baby. It's 3. The silence on the other end lasted several heartbeats. 3. Helen's voice cracked with emotion. "Oh, Violet. 3 blessings. 3 reasons Alexander Sterling can go to hell." That too. They both started laughing, the kind of hysterical laughter that comes from too much emotion and too little sleep. The next 5 months were the hardest of Violet's life. She'd enrolled in an architecture graduate program at Columbia, determined to build credentials that didn't rely on the Sterling name. Pregnant with triplets, she dragged herself to classes while fighting nausea and exhaustion that felt like drowning. Helen moved from a rent-controlled Brooklyn apartment into Violet's Soho loft to help. She'd retired from nursing to support her daughter through the pregnancy. "You don't have to do this, Mom," Violet said one evening as Helen rubbed her swollen feet. "I have money from the settlement. I can hire help." "Hired help doesn't love you." Helen's eyes were fierce. "Hired help doesn't understand what you're going through. You're my daughter, and these are my grandchildren. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. I don't know how I'm going to do this. 3 babies, graduate school, starting a career. I can barely tie my own shoes anymore. You do it the same way women have always done impossible things. 1 day at a time. 1 step at a time. 1 breath at a time. What if I'm not strong enough? Then you fake it until you are." The babies came 6 weeks early on a freezing January morning. Violet woke at 3 a.m. with contractions that felt like her body was being ripped apart. Helen called 911. The ambulance ride to Mount Sinai was a blur of pain and fear and desperate prayer. "Please," Violet gripped a paramedic's hand. "Please let them be okay. They're too small. It's too soon. We're almost there. Hold on." The emergency C-section happened so fast, Violet barely had time to be terrified. One moment she was being wheeled into an operating room. The next, a tiny cry pierced the air. "It's a girl." The doctor held up a tiny, wrinkled creature who looked impossibly fragile. Then another cry. And another. 2 boys. The doctor's smile was visible above his mask. 3 healthy babies, underweight but breathing on their own. "You did it, Mama." Violet burst into tears. 3 babies. 3 miracles. 3 pieces of her heart now existing outside her body. They were so small. Lily weighed 4 pounds, 2 ounces. Marcus was 4 pounds even. Sophie was the smallest at 3 pounds, 14 ounces. They spent their first 3 weeks in the NICU, connected to monitors and tubes, fighting for every breath. Violet practically lived at the hospital. She'd pump breast milk every 3 hours, hold each baby for precious minutes of skin-to-skin contact, talk to them about the life they'd have together, promise them she'd be enough, even if their father wasn't there. "Look at you," she whispered to Lily, who had Alexander's gray eyes and his stubborn chin. "You're going to be fierce. I can already tell." Marcus had Alexander's dark hair and serious expression. "You're going to be brilliant. Going to change the world." Sophie was the quietest, the smallest, the one who seemed to study everything with intense focus. "You're going to be deep. Going to see things other people miss." Helen would arrive each morning with coffee and encouragement. "They're getting stronger every day. Look at them fight. They're fighters because they have to be." Violet's voice cracked. "Because their father chose someone else and their mother is barely keeping it together. Their mother is a warrior." Helen squeezed her shoulder. "And they're going to grow up knowing they were wanted desperately, even if only by us." After 3 weeks, the triplets came home. The loft was transformed into a chaos of cribs and bottles and diapers. Violet's carefully designed space became a monument to survival. Sleep happened in 20-minute increments. Showers were a luxury. Her graduate school assignments were completed between feedings at 2 a.m. "I can't do this." Violet sobbed one night after the third consecutive hour of 3 babies crying in rotation. "I can't keep all of them alive and finish school and build a career. I'm going to fail. At everything." "You're not failing." Helen took Sophie from her arms and began the practiced bounce and sway. "You're surviving, and that's more than enough right now. Surviving isn't thriving. Surviving is how you get to thriving. One day at a time, remember?" The months blurred together. First smiles at 6 weeks. First laughs at 3 months. Rolling over, sitting up. Each milestone a victory Violet celebrated alone, without the partner she'd imagined would share these moments. She finished her graduate degree with a 4 gigapascals while raising 3 infants. Walked across the stage at graduation with her mother holding 3 6-month-olds in the audience. "That's your mama," Helen whispered to the babies. "That's the strongest woman in the world." Violet's thesis on sustainable urban housing caught the attention of Morrison Architecture, one of New York's most innovative firms. They offered her a junior architect position with a salary that would let her hire childcare and move to a bigger apartment. The next 4 years were a relentless climb. Violet worked 80-hour weeks when the triplets were with her mother or the nanny, brought them to the office when childcare fell through, designed award-winning buildings during nap time, built a reputation for sustainable, beautiful designs that considered human needs alongside aesthetic appeal. Her Seattle waterfront project won the prestigious Pritzker Prize when the triplets were 3. She'd stood on stage accepting the award, looking out at an audience of the world's most respected architects, and thought about Alexander's voice calling her an error that needed correcting. "Look at me now," she thought. "Look at what your error accomplished." By the time the triplets were 4, Violet had left Morrison to start her own firm. Monroe Architecture opened in a converted warehouse in Brooklyn with 3 employees, and a vision for changing how cities approached residential design. Her Copenhagen residential tower won international acclaim. Her Boston waterfront development was featured in Architectural Digest. Her name became synonymous with innovative, sustainable design that didn't sacrifice beauty for environmental responsibility. Money stopped being a constant source of anxiety. The settlement from Alexander had been carefully invested. Her firm was profitable. She bought a brownstone in Park Slope with a backyard for the children, and a home office where she could work after they went to bed. The triplets thrived. Lily showed artistic talent early, filling sketchbooks with drawings that revealed an unusual understanding of color and emotion. Marcus was analytical and precise, building elaborate structures from blocks and explaining the engineering principles involved. Sophie was the reader, the quiet one, always observing and processing. They asked about their father constantly. "Why don't we have a daddy?" Lily asked when they were 3. "Some families have 2 parents. Some have 1. Some have grandparents or aunts or chosen family. We have each other, and that's perfect." "But where is our daddy?" Marcus pressed with characteristic logic. "Your father wasn't able to be part of our family, but that doesn't mean you're not loved completely. Did he not want us?" Sophie's quiet question broke Violet's heart every time. "He didn't know about you, sweetheart. And by the time you were born, we were building our own beautiful life. It was the truth, even if it wasn't the whole truth." Helen died when the triplets were 4, peacefully in her sleep after a stroke. Violet had found her in the morning when she'd arrived to drop off the children before work. The grief was crushing. Her mother had been her anchor, her support, her CO parent through the impossible early years. "How am I going to do this alone?" Violet sobbed at the funeral while the triplets clung to her legs. But she wasn't alone. She had 3 children who needed her, a business that depended on her, a life she'd built from absolute nothing. So she survived. Again, one day at a time. By the time the triplets were 5, Violet had transformed herself completely. She was no longer the heartbroken woman Alexander had discarded. She was Dr. Violet Monroe, award-winning architect, successful business owner, devoted mother. She dated occasionally, but nothing serious. Her heart had been so thoroughly destroyed, she wasn't sure she believed in romantic love anymore. Maternal love, yes. The fierce, protective love for her children consumed her. But the kind of love that made you vulnerable to another, that felt impossibly dangerous. The triplets were brilliant. All three tested into the gifted program at their private school. Lily's art was displayed in the school gallery. Marcus built a working robot for the science fair. Sophie wrote stories that made her teachers cry. They asked about their father less as they got older, accepting Violet's careful explanations. That some things were complicated, but that they were loved completely. Violet thought she'd built an impenetrable life, a fortress of success and maternal devotion that couldn't be breached by the past. Then her phone rang with an offer she couldn't refuse. "Ms. Monroe, this is Rebecca Chen from Sterling Global. Mr. Sterling would like to discuss a potential project with you." Violet's blood ran cold. "I don't take projects from Sterling Global. Mr. Sterling specifically requested you. The Riverside development is failing, and he believes you're the only architect who can save it. He's willing to pay any fee you name. Tell Mr. Sterling I'm not interested. He said to mention it's a $2 billion project that will house 500 families and include community resources the Lower East Side desperately needs. He said you'd care about that more than the money." Violet closed her eyes. Damn him for knowing her so well. "I'll consider it. Send me the project details." For 3 days, she studied the Riverside development plans. They were terrible. Generic luxury condos with no consideration for community impact or environmental sustainability. The kind of soulless development that destroyed neighborhoods instead of enhancing them. But the location was perfect. The scope was enormous. And done right, it could actually help people instead of just generating profit. Against every instinct screaming at her to stay away, Violet called back. "Tell Mr. Sterling I'll meet with him. Once. If I don't like what I hear, I'm walking away." Which brought her to this moment, standing in the lobby of Sterling Global 5 years after she'd left as a discarded wife, returning as one of the most successful architects in the country. The elevator ride to the 52nd floor felt like traveling through time. Each floor a year she'd survived without him. Each ding of the elevator a heartbeat reminding her she was strong enough for this. The doors opened to reveal the executive suite she remembered too well. Same expensive art. Same intimidating receptionist. Same sense of cold perfection. But Violet wasn't the same woman who'd once walked these halls as Alexander's wife. "Ms. Monroe." The receptionist's smile was professional. "Mr. Sterling is ready for you in the main conference room." Violet followed her through glass corridors, her heels clicking with confident rhythm. She dressed carefully. Tailored navy suit, her Pritzker prize pin on her lapel, hair pulled back in a sleek bun. Every inch the successful professional. The conference room door opened, and there he was. Alexander Sterling stood at the head of the table, and Violet's traitorous heart stuttered. He'd aged. Not badly, but noticeably. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 5 years ago. Gray threading through his dark hair. A weariness to his posture that suggested the weight of his empire was heavier than it looked. But he was still devastating. Still the man who'd once been her entire world. "Violet." His voice was rough with emotion. "Thank you for coming. Mr. Sterling." She kept her tone professional, distant. "Your message indicated this was urgent." Their eyes met across the conference table, and the air between them crackled with 5 years of history neither could acknowledge. And somewhere in the building below, 3 children who looked exactly like Alexander Sterling sat in Monroe Architecture's visiting area, coloring pictures and waiting for their mother. The secret that would change everything was about to explode, but neither Violet nor Alexander knew that yet. "Please, sit." Alexander gestured to the chair across from him, but Violet remained standing. A power move she'd learned in boardrooms where being a young woman meant proving herself twice as hard. "I prefer to stand. Your assistant said this would be brief." Alexander's jaw tightened slightly. The first crack in his professional facade. The Riverside development. He opened a portfolio, revealing renderings of a massive waterfront project. $2 billion, 40 stories, mixed-use residential and commercial. It's the biggest project Sterling Global has ever attempted. And it's failing. Violet moved closer to study the designs, her professional eye immediately cataloging the flaws. "These are terrible. No community integration, no environmental consideration. Just another luxury tower that prices out the people who actually live in the neighborhood, which is why I need you." Alexander's voice carried something she couldn't quite identify. Desperation, maybe. "The City Planning Commission has rejected the designs twice. We're hemorrhaging investor money. The whole project is on the verge of collapse. You hired Morrison and Associates. They're known for cookie-cutter developments that maximize profit and minimize vision. They were supposed to be reliable. Alexander ran a hand through his hair, disrupting its perfect styling. Turns out reliability doesn't mean much when the city won't approve your plans. And you think I'll save you? Violet turned to face him fully. The woman you threw away for not being good enough is now your only option. Do you appreciate the irony? I appreciate your talent. Alexander met her eyes, and Violet felt that familiar jolt, the connection that had once made her believe in soulmates. I always did, just not enough to stay married to me. The words created a silence that filled the enormous room. Through the glass walls, Violet could see Alexander's assistant pretending not to watch their confrontation. Violet, I know our past is complicated. Our past is simple. She crossed her arms, immediately regretting the defensive gesture. You wanted children. You didn't think I could provide them. You found someone who could. End of story. Is it? Alexander moved closer, lowering his voice. Because I've followed your career. The Pritzker Prize, the Copenhagen Tower, the Seattle waterfront. You became everything I always knew you could be. Everything you thought wasn't enough without a functioning womb attached. I was wrong. The admission seemed to cost him something. I was wrong about everything. Being wrong doesn't change history. Violet moved back to the designs, needing distance from the intensity in his eyes. Why should I help you, Alexander? Give me one good reason that isn't about your failing project or your desperate need. Because 500 families need affordable housing in a neighborhood that's being destroyed by gentrification. Because the Lower East Side deserves development that serves the community instead of displacing it. Because regardless of what happened between us, you care about architecture that helps people, not just profit. He'd done his research. The appeal to her values was calculated but effective. And there's something else. I can hear it in your voice. Alexander was quiet for a long moment, and because I want the chance to apologize properly, to acknowledge that what I did to you was unforgivable, to maybe, if you'll allow it, explain who I was then versus who I'm trying to be now. I don't need your apologies. Maybe I need to give them anyway. Violet studied his face. This man who'd once been her entire world and then her greatest devastation, behind her professional success, behind the armor of international acclaim. She was still a woman with 3 children who asked about their father. I'll take the project, but I have conditions. Name them. I redesign from scratch. No committee approvals, no interference. My vision or nothing. Agreed. My fee is $15 million, plus 3% of gross profits. Alexander didn't even blink. Done. And our personal history stays personal. This is business. You don't get to use it as therapy or closure or whatever you think you need from me. This time, Alexander hesitated. What if I think I need forgiveness? Then you'll have to earn it somewhere other than a conference room. Before Alexander could respond, the door opened. A woman entered, polished and professional, and visibly pregnant. Very pregnant. Alex, darling, I thought we were having lunch. Oh, the woman stopped, her eyes landing on Violet with immediate assessment. I didn't realize you had a meeting. Vivian, Alexander's voice carried a warning. This is Violet Monroe, the architect I mentioned. Violet, my ex-wife, Vivian Cross Sterling. So, this was the woman Alexander had chosen. Violet extended her hand with professional courtesy, noting Vivian, his designer maternity wear, and the enormous diamond on her left hand. Pregnant again. Congratulations. Thank you. Vivian's smile was razor sharp. My fiancé, Marcus Rothschild, and I are expecting twins. I believe in large families. The jab was clear. I can give men what you cannot. How lovely. Violet gathered her things with elegant efficiency. Mr. Sterling, I'll have preliminary sketches to you within 2 weeks. My assistant will send the contract details. As she walked toward the door, Vivian's voice followed her. Monroe, that name sounds familiar. Weren't you? I'll show you out. Alexander interrupted quickly, moving to escort Violet himself. In the elevator, trapped in descending silence, Violet felt the weight of everything unsaid pressing against her chest. She doesn't know about us. It wasn't a question. She knows I was married before. Not to whom. Alexander watched the floor numbers dropping. I didn't see the point in explaining that I destroyed my marriage to be with her, only to have her leave me anyway. Karma is poetic that way. Yes. Alexander turned to face her as the elevator slowed. Violet, I know you said this is only business, but seeing you again... Don't. She held up a hand, stopping whatever confession was coming. Don't make this complicated. You need an architect. I'm providing architectural services. That's all this is. The elevator doors opened to the lobby, and Violet stepped out into her carefully constructed life, one that didn't include Alexander Sterling or the messy emotions he represented. What she didn't see was Alexander watching her leave with the expression of a man who'd just realized what he'd lost. And what neither of them knew was that 3 floors below, in Monroe Architecture's temporary office space, 3 5-year-old children sat coloring pictures of their family. A family that was about to get a lot more complicated. The next 3 weeks unfolded in a careful dance of professionalism and unspoken tension. Violet threw herself into redesigning the Riverside project, creating something that wove green spaces through residential towers, integrated community needs with commercial viability, and transformed a development into a neighborhood. She met with Alexander twice a week to present progress. Each meeting was a masterclass in controlled emotion. They discussed load-bearing walls and environmental systems and community impact. They never discussed the past, never acknowledged the electricity that crackled between them whenever their hands accidentally touched over blueprints. Your design is brilliant, Alexander said during their 4th meeting, studying her renderings with genuine admiration. This is exactly what the city needs. It's what the community deserves. Violet kept her tone professional. Development should enhance neighborhoods, not destroy them. When did you become so passionate about social impact? When I had to rebuild my life from nothing and realized that money doesn't insulate you from struggle. That privilege is often just luck. That the people we overlook are usually the ones doing the most important work. Alexander looked at her with something that might have been regret. You've changed. I've grown. There's a difference. The project was coming together beautifully. The City Planning Commission loved the redesign. Investors were returning. Sterling Global's stock price was climbing. Everything was perfect. Until the morning, Violet's carefully constructed walls came crashing down. It started with a phone call at 7 a.m. Her nanny, Maria, sobbing into the phone. Miss Monroe, I'm so sorry. My mother in Puerto Rico, she had a heart attack. I have to fly out today. I know this is terrible timing, but... Of course, Violet's mind was already racing through backup options. Family comes first. Take all the time you need. She called her backup sitter. No answer. Called the daycare that sometimes took emergency drop-ins. Full capacity. Called every parent in the Triplets class hoping for a favor. Nothing. Which left her staring at her calendar and the mandatory presentation to Sterling Global's full board of directors. Scheduled for 2 p.m. A presentation that couldn't be rescheduled without jeopardizing the entire project. Lily appeared in her bedroom doorway, already dressed in the rainbow shirt she insisted on wearing 3 times a week. Mommy, is Miss Maria coming? Not today, sweetheart. She had a family emergency. Marcus joined his sister, his serious expression so much like Alexander's, it sometimes hurt to look at. So who's watching us? You are. Violet made the decision in that instant. You're coming to Mommy's office today. Special treat. Really? Sophie's face lit up. We get to see where you work? Really? But you have to promise to be very quiet and very good. Mommy has an important meeting. We promise. All 3 chorused together. 2 hours later, Violet set her children up in Monroe Architecture's client waiting area with coloring books, tablets, and strict instructions. Stay right here. Don't wander. If you need anything, ask Jennifer at the front desk. Mommy will check on you between meetings. We'll be good, Lily promised, already absorbed in sketching something elaborate. Marcus was building something with the magnetic tiles she'd packed. Sophie had her nose in a book about space exploration. They looked so perfect, so innocent. 3 beautiful children who had no idea their father was 20 floors above them. Violet kissed each head and headed to her office to do final preparation for the presentation. She never saw Alexander arrive 30 minutes early. She never saw him walk past the waiting area. Never saw him stop dead in his tracks. Never saw the exact moment his entire world shifted on its axis. Lily looked up from her drawing, ever the social one. Are you here to see our mommy? Alexander couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't process what his eyes were showing him. 3 children, the right age, the unmistakable Sterling features, his eyes, his bone structure, his mother's chin, his grandfather's serious expression on the boy's face. "Your mommy?" he managed, his voice sounding distant. "Ms. Monroe," Marcus corrected with precision. "That's what people at work call her. But she's our mommy. What are your names?" The question came out rough, desperate. "I'm Lily. This is Marcus and Sophie. We're triplets, which means we were all born at the same time. Mommy says we're a miracle." A miracle. The word echoed in Alexander's mind as the implications crashed through him like falling dominoes. The timeline, the divorce, Violet's refusal to discuss their personal history, her fury when he'd mentioned the past. These were his children. His children. "Are you okay, mister?" Sophie asked with concern. "You look like you saw a ghost." Alexander stared at 3 5-year-olds who were impossible and yet undeniably real. 3 children who'd grown up without him. 3 lives he'd missed completely. "Mr. Sterling," Violet's assistant appeared in the doorway. "Ms. Monroe is ready for you in the conference room." But Alexander couldn't move, couldn't look away from these children who just redefined his understanding of the past 5 years. "We're going to be really quiet," Lily whispered conspiratorially. "Mommy has an important meeting and we promise to be good." "I'm sure you will be." Alexander's voice cracked. "You seem like very good kids." "We try," Marcus said seriously. "Mommy works really hard, so we don't want to make things difficult." "Your mommy is." Alexander swallowed hard. "Your mommy is an amazing woman." "We know." Sophie smiled. "She's the best mommy in the whole world." "Mr. Sterling?" The assistant looked concerned. "Should I tell Ms. Monroe you need a moment?" "No." Alexander forced himself to move, to walk away from the children who were his but didn't know it. "I'm coming." The conference room felt surreal. Violet stood before her presentation boards, professional and composed. But when their eyes met, she knew immediately that something had changed. "You saw them." She said it quietly once the assistant left. "Were you ever going to tell me?" The question hung between them, loaded with 5 years of secrets and missed moments. "I don't know." Violet's professional mask cracked slightly. "I told myself I was protecting them from being rejected the way I was, but maybe I was just protecting myself from having to share them with you. They're 5 years old." Alexander's voice shook with emotion he couldn't contain. 5 years, Violet. 5 birthdays. First words. First steps. Everything. How could you keep them from me? How could you call me defective and replace me with Vivian? Violet's eyes flashed with old pain and fresh fury. How could you throw away our marriage like a failed business venture? You don't get to play victim here, Alexander. You created this situation by divorcing you, not by abandoning children I didn't know existed. You abandoned them the moment you decided I wasn't good enough to build a family with. Violet's professional composure shattered. You told me I was an error to be corrected. What was I supposed to do? Come crawling back and say, surprise, the defective wife is pregnant? Give you the satisfaction of proving you'd done your duty even with the wrong woman? They're my children. They're my children. I carried them. Birthed them 6 weeks premature while you were marrying Vivian. I stayed up nights with 3 colicky babies while you were building your perfect legacy. I sacrificed everything to give them the life they deserved. You contributed DNA. I contributed everything else. The truth of her words hit Alexander like physical blows. Let me meet them properly. His voice broke. Please, I know I have no right to ask, but they deserve to know their father. Do they? Violet's laugh was bitter. What do I tell them? This is your father who didn't want you because he thought I couldn't make you. This is the man who abandoned us before he knew we existed. Tell them I was a fool who made the worst mistake of his life. Alexander moved closer. Tell them I spent 5 years in a loveless marriage trying to create what I'd already destroyed. Tell them anything you want, Violet, but please don't shut me out of their lives. Why should I trust you not to hurt them the way you hurt me? Because hurting them would destroy me. Because I've spent 5 years realizing that legacy means nothing without love. Because those 3 children out there are the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and I've already missed too much. Violet stared at him, seeing genuine anguish in his eyes. 1 meeting, supervised. And if you hurt them, Alexander, if you let them down or treat them like obligations, I will make sure you never see them again. Thank you. The words came out like a prayer. When? Saturday. The park near my house. 2 hours. 2 hours to meet the children I should have known their entire lives. 2 hours to prove you've changed it all from the man who destroyed our marriage. Have you ever watched someone's entire worldview shatter in real time? Have you ever seen the exact moment someone realizes they threw away everything that actually mattered? If this story's gripping you, if you're wondering what happens when Alexander finally meets his children properly, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. Because what comes next will test everything you think you know about forgiveness and second chances. Drop a comment telling me, could you forgive someone who hurt you this deeply? I read every single one. The board presentation happened in a fog. Violet delivered her pitch with professional excellence, answering questions about sustainability and community impact and projected returns. The board approved the redesign unanimously. Sterling Global's Riverside project was saved, but Alexander barely registered the victory. He sat at the head of the table, watching Violet command the room, and saw her completely for the first time. Not as the wife who couldn't give him children, not as the error he'd corrected, but as the extraordinary woman who'd built an empire while raising his children alone. After the meeting, he found her packing up her presentation materials. I hired a private investigator. He admitted, after I saw them, I needed to know everything. Violet's hands stilled on her laptop. So you know about the premature birth, the NICU, the struggles. I saw photos. Alexander's voice was rough. You graduating with 3 6-month-olds in the audience. The triplets' first day of school. Your mother helping you. Everything I should have been there for. But you weren't. No. I was busy building a life with a woman I didn't love, having a son I barely get to see, convincing myself I'd made the right choice. Did you make the right choice? Alexander looked at her with devastating honesty. I made the worst mistake of my life, and I've spent 5 years paying for it. That doesn't give you automatic access to our children. I know, which is why I'm asking, not demanding, why I'll take whatever you're willing to give, even if it's just 2 hours on Saturday. Violet closed her laptop with careful precision. They're going to have questions, hard questions about why you weren't there, why they grew up without a father. I won't lie to them to make you look good. I don't want you to lie. I want them to know the truth, that their father was young and stupid and scared, that he prioritized the wrong things, that he spent 5 years learning to be better. And if they don't want a relationship with you, then I'll respect that and live with the consequences of my choices. Saturday morning arrived wrapped in autumn sunshine and Violet's paralyzing anxiety. She'd prepared the children carefully, explaining that they'd be meeting someone very important, someone who'd been away but wanted to know them. Is this our father? Marcus had asked with his characteristic directness. And Violet, unable to lie to those gray eyes that mirrored Alexander's, had confirmed the truth. Yes, sweetheart, this is your father. Now, watching Alexander approach across the playground, she saw her children's futures diverging into unknown territory. Remember, she told them quietly, be yourselves, ask any questions you want, and know that no matter what happens, you are loved completely. Hi. Lily stepped forward first, fearless as always. Mommy says you're our dad. Is that true? Alexander knelt to the children's level, his hands trembling. Yes, I'm your father. My name is Alexander, but I'd very much like it if you'd call me Dad. Where have you been? Marcus asked. Most kids have dads who are around. The question was a knife to the heart. I was somewhere I shouldn't have been, making mistakes and not knowing what I was missing. Did you not want us? Sophie's quiet voice carried the fear Violet had always dreaded. I didn't know about you. Alexander's voice was thick with emotion, but if I had known, I would have moved mountains to be part of your lives. You're the most beautiful children I've ever seen. We look like you, Lily observed, tilting her head in that familiar Sterling way. Mommy showed us pictures. We have your eyes. You have a lot more than that. Alexander's gaze swept over them, cataloging features and mannerisms. You have intelligence and curiosity and strength that makes me incredibly proud. How can you be proud if you don't know us? Marcus challenged. Fair question. You're right. I don't know you yet, but I'd like to, if you'll let me. For the next 2 hours, Alexander listened to his children with devoted attention. He learned that Lily wanted to be an artist like her mother, that Marcus dreamed of building skyscrapers, that Sophie loved stories about families finding their way home. He pushed them on swings and helped build sandcastles and answered hundreds of questions. What's your favorite color? Blue, like the ocean. Do you like dinosaurs? Yes, especially velociraptors. Why weren't you there when we were babies? Because I made a terrible mistake, and I'm sorry." The honesty seemed to satisfy them in a way platitudes wouldn't have. Violet watched from a nearby bench, her heart performing complicated acrobatics. This was the Alexander she'd fallen in love with. Present, engaged, genuinely delighted by the children's enthusiasm. But she'd learned the hard way that Alexander could be charming when it suited his purposes. "They like him," she admitted when he finally joined her on the bench, the children having run off to the playground equipment. "They're extraordinary." Alexander's voice carried wonder. "Brilliant and kind, and exactly what I would have hoped for if I'd been smart enough to hope 5 years ago." "They've asked about you their entire lives," Violet said quietly. "I've had to answer questions about why their father wasn't there while building a life that didn't include you." "I know, and I'm sorry. Sorry isn't enough, Alexander. Sorry doesn't cover missed birthdays and first days of school and 3 children who've cried themselves to sleep wondering why their father didn't want them. I want them now. I want to be part of their lives, to make up for lost time. You can't make up for lost time. You can only build from here. Then let me build. Let me show up. Let me prove I've changed." They sat in silence, watching their children play with the ease of those who'd always been a team. "I'm getting divorced from Vivian," Alexander said finally. "The papers were filed last week. That's not my business. I'm telling you anyway. Because I married her for all the wrong reasons. Because she fit the profile. Because she could give me children. But I never loved her. Not the way I loved you." Past tense, Violet noted. Present tense. Alexander's eyes held hers. "I never stopped loving you, Violet. Even when I was with Vivian. Even when I was trying to convince myself I'd made the right choice. You were the ghost that haunted every success and failure. You don't get to say that to me." Violet's voice shook. "You don't get to destroy my life and then waltz back in with declarations of love." "I know, but it's true anyway. What do you want me to do with that information? Let me earn my way back, not just into the children's lives, but into yours. I can't risk my heart again with someone who's already proven he'll prioritize other things when it matters. I'm not the same man I was. Prove it." She faced him with challenge in her eyes, not with words. "Prove it by being consistent for the children, by showing up week after week even when the novelty wears off, by putting them first even when it's inconvenient." "I will. Every day for as long as it takes." It was the smallest crack in her armor, but Alexander seized it like a lifeline. The next 6 months unfolded with surprising grace. Alexander showed up every Saturday without fail. Soccer games where Marcus scored the winning goal. Dance recitals where Lily performed a piece she'd choreographed herself. School conferences where Sophie's teacher praised her creative writing. He learned his children's favorite foods. That Lily liked peanut butter and banana sandwiches cut into triangles. That Marcus would only eat apples sliced a specific way. That Sophie preferred her pasta with butter and nothing else. He learned their bedtime routines. 3 stories for Lily, who would fall asleep mid-sentence. A discussion of the day's events with Marcus, who needed to process everything logically. Quiet time with Sophie, who liked to share one thing she was grateful for. He learned how to comfort them. That Lily needed physical affection when upset. That Marcus needed space to think. That Sophie needed verbal reassurance that everything would be okay. He made mistakes. Showed up late to a game because of a board meeting. Forgot about a parent volunteer day. Said the wrong thing when Sophie was upset about a friendship problem. But he learned from each mistake. Adjusted. Improved. Violet watched this transformation with cautious optimism. The man who appeared every Saturday with art supplies for Lily, building sets for Marcus and books for Sophie was different from the one who divorced her. This Alexander asked questions and listened to answers. This Alexander prioritized presence over profit. This Alexander looked at his children like they were the most important thing in the world, because they were. "Mommy?" Lily asked one evening while Violet tucked her in. "Is Daddy going to live with us someday? Would you like that?" "I think so. He's really nice, and he makes you smile different." "Different how?" "Like you're happy to be strong. But with Daddy, you smile like you're happy to not have to be strong all the time." The insight from a 5-year-old was devastating in its accuracy. Meanwhile, the Riverside project was transforming into something extraordinary under Violet's design. More than a development, it was becoming a community. Affordable housing integrated with market-rate units, green spaces and playgrounds, a community center with programs for children and seniors, a project that enhanced the neighborhood instead of destroying it. Working with Alexander reminded Violet of why she'd fallen in love. His brilliance, his passion for building things that lasted, his ability to see possibilities where others saw problems. They worked late nights in her home office, reviewing plans after the children were asleep. Professional discussions that sometimes drifted into personal territory. "I need to ask you something," Alexander said one evening, setting down his tablet. "It's not about the project. If it's about the green roof specifications, it's about us." Violet's heart rate spiked. "Alex, I know you said I needed to prove myself. I know 6 months isn't enough to make up for 5 years of absence, but I'm asking anyway." He moved closer. "Let me come home. Not to the penthouse, not to Sterling Global, but here, to you and our children. Let me be the family we should have been." "It's too soon, is it? Or are you protecting yourself from the possibility that I might actually have changed?" Violet stood, needing to pace. "You hurt me, Alexander. You called me defective and threw me away like I was worthless. Do you have any idea how long it took to rebuild my self-worth after that? How hard I had to work to believe I was enough? You were always enough." Alexander stood too, closing the distance. "You were everything, and I was too blind and stupid and scared to recognize it." Scared of what? Of building something real instead of something that looked good on paper. He reached out, gently taking her hands. "My entire life was about meeting expectations, the right school, the right career, the right marriage. You were the first real thing I'd ever felt, and it terrified me. So when you couldn't immediately give me children, I used that as an excuse to run back to what was safe and expected. That doesn't make it hurt less, I know, but I'm not asking you to forget the pain. I'm asking you to consider whether we might build something stronger because of it. Whether two broken people might fit together differently than two perfect ones ever could." Violet searched his face for cracks in his sincerity. "What about Vivian? Your son? I have joint custody now. Every other week, plus holidays. Vivian is remarried and focused on her new family. We've reached a peaceful coexistence based on what's best for our son. And if I say no, if I'm not ready, then I keep showing up. Keep proving myself. Keep loving you and our children until you are ready." Alexander squeezed her hands gently. "I'm not going anywhere, Violet. Not again. Not ever. I need time. Time to trust this. To believe it won't disappear when something more convenient comes along. Take all the time you need. I'll wait." But fate had other plans. The call came at 2 in the morning on a Tuesday. Every parent's nightmare phone call. "Ms. Monroe, this is Mount Sinai Hospital. There's been an accident." Violet's blood turned to ice. "My children. Your daughter Lily was in a car accident. She's in critical condition." The world stopped. Violet's mind couldn't process the words, couldn't accept the reality they represented. I'm coming right now." Her hands shook so badly she could barely dial Alexander's number. He answered on the first ring. "Violet, what's wrong?" "Lily. Car accident. Mount Sinai. I'm on my way. I'll meet you there." The emergency room was a blur of fluorescent lights and antiseptic smells and the sound of her own heart breaking. A kind nurse led her to a private waiting room. "Your daughter is in surgery. The doctor will update you as soon as possible." "What happened?" Violet's voice came out broken. "How did this happen?" "She was at a sleepover. The other mother was driving them home early because Lily wasn't feeling well. A drunk driver ran a red light, T-boned the passenger side where Lily was sitting." "Is she going to die?" The nurse's hesitation was answer enough. "We're doing everything we can." Alexander arrived within 20 minutes, still in pajama pants and a hastily thrown-on sweater. He pulled Violet into his arms as she finally let herself break down. She was at a sleepover. Violet sobbed into his chest. She wasn't feeling well. They were bringing her home early. And now she's strong. Alexander's voice was rough with his own tears. "She's a Sterling and a Monroe. She's a fighter." They sat together through the night, holding hands, holding each other, holding on to hope with desperate strength. Marcus and Sophie arrived in the morning with Alexander's mother, who'd offered to watch them during the crisis. The moment the twins saw their parents' faces, they knew. "Is Lily going to die?" Sophie whispered, her eyes wide with terror. No. Violet pulled her children close. No, baby. Lily is fighting, and we're going to fight with her. Can we see her? Not yet, but soon. For 3 days, they maintained a vigil. Violet and Alexander and the twins, a family united by crisis and love. They read to Lily through the ICU window, played her favorite music, reminded her of all the art she still had to create, and slowly, miraculously, she began to improve. She's waking up, the doctor said on the 4th day. Brain activity is increasing. This is very good news. When Lily finally opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was her entire family surrounding her bed. Hi, she whispered, her voice weak but present. Violet burst into tears of relief. Alexander gripped her hand like a lifeline. Marcus and Sophie crowded close, babbling about how scared they'd been. Did I miss anything important? Lily managed a small smile. Nothing that matters, Alexander said, his voice rough with emotion. Everything important is right here. In the quiet moments, while Lily dozed and the twins colored in the corner, Violet leaned against Alexander's shoulder. I was so scared, she admitted. So terrified of losing her. Me too. Alexander pressed a kiss to her hair. The thought of not being in her life, of missing out because of my stupidity 5 years ago, it was unbearable. You're here now. That's what matters. Am I? Alexander turned to face her. Am I really here, Violet? Because I want to be, not just for the children, but for you, for us. Violet looked at this man who'd shown up every day for 6 months, who'd sat with her through the worst crisis of her life, who'd loved their children with devotion that erased his previous failures. Yes, she said quietly. Yes, you're here. And maybe it's time we stop living separately when our hearts have been together for months. Alexander's eyes widened with hope and disbelief. Are you saying... I'm saying come home, Alexander. Really home. Let's build this family properly. He kissed her then. Soft and reverent. A promise sealed with lips and tears and joy. When the children woke from their naps, they found their parents holding hands, smiling at each other with unguarded happiness. Are you back together? Marcus asked. We're working on it, Violet said. Good, Lily announced from her hospital bed, her voice stronger. Because Daddy makes you happy, and you make him happy, and we're a family. Yes, Alexander agreed, his eyes never leaving Violet's face. We're a family. 3 months later, Alexander moved into the Park Slope brownstone, not as a guest, but as a partner, a father, a man who'd earned his place through consistency and love. The children adjusted quickly. Suddenly there were 2 parents at breakfast, 2 voices saying goodnight, 2 people to help with homework and referee arguments and celebrate victories. Violet adjusted more slowly, learning to trust again, to share space and decisions and the weight of responsibility she'd carried alone for 5 years. But Alexander was patient. He proved himself in small ways, taking the children to school when Violet had early meetings, handling bedtime when she was working late, being present without needing praise or recognition. One evening, 6 months after Lily's accident, Alexander found Violet in her home office, reviewing plans for a new project. I have something to ask you. If it's about the structural engineering on the Riverside Tower, it's not about work. He knelt beside her chair, pulling out a small velvet box. I know we've done this before. I know I failed you the first time, but I'm not the same man who put a ring on your finger 7 years ago. Alexander opened the box, revealing a simple platinum band. That man didn't understand what he had. This man does. This man has spent 6 months learning what it means to be a partner, a father, a man worthy of your love. Violet's eyes filled with tears. Marry me again, Violet. Not because of legacy or expectations or what anyone else thinks we should do. Marry me because we've both been broken and rebuilt ourselves into people who fit together better than we ever did before. Marry me because our children deserve to see their parents choose love every single day. Marry me because I love you more than anything in this world, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving it. What if you hurt me again? Then you'll leave, and I'll deserve it. But I'm betting everything that I won't, that I've learned what actually matters, that loving you and our children is the only legacy that counts. Violet looked at this man who'd destroyed her and then spent a year rebuilding what he'd broken. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you again. The kiss was interrupted by 3 children bursting through the door. "Are you getting married?" Lily squealed. "We are." Alexander pulled all three into the embrace. "We're going to be a family. Officially. We're already a family," Marcus pointed out logically. "Now we'll just make it legal." The wedding happened on a spring morning in the Brownstones' garden. Small and intimate and everything the first wedding wasn't. No society guests or photographers or pressure to perform. Just family and friends who'd supported them through the hardest times. Lily, fully recovered, walked down the makeshift aisle scattering rose petals with artistic flair. Marcus and Sophie followed as ring bearer and junior bridesmaid, beaming with pride. "Do you, Alexander, take Violet to be your wife? To cherish her talents, support her dreams, and build a partnership based on mutual respect and enduring love?" "I do. With all my heart, for all my life." "Do you, Violet, take Alexander to be your husband? Trusting in his growth, believing in his commitment, and opening your heart to the possibility of forever?" "I do." When they kissed, 3 children cheered louder than anyone. "Ladies and gentlemen," the officiant announced, "I present to you the Sterling Monroe family: Alexander, Violet, Lily, Marcus, and Sophie." That evening, as they danced under string lights, Violet marveled at how far they'd traveled. "Any regrets?" Alexander asked. "Only one. That it took nearly losing everything to find our way back here. Maybe we needed to lose everything to understand what actually mattered." He pulled her closer. "I spent 5 years building an empire and living in an empty marriage. You spent 5 years building a family and a career that changed skylines. We both had to become who we needed to be before we could build this together." Philosophical for a real estate developer. "I learned from the best architect I know. Sometimes you have to tear down to the foundation before you can build something that lasts." Later, after the guests had left and the children were asleep, Violet and Alexander stood in the garden where they'd just been married. "Thank you," Alexander said quietly. "For what?" "For giving me a second chance I didn't deserve. For raising our children into extraordinary humans. For being strong enough to be vulnerable again. Thank you for proving you could change. For showing up every day. For loving our children enough to earn your way back into their lives. And into yours." Violet smiled, pressing her hand to his chest where his heart beat steady and strong. "Into mine, most of all. So what's the moral of this story? What can we learn from Violet and Alexander's journey through heartbreak and redemption? First, never reduce someone to what they can't give you. Alexander saw Violet only through the lens of her fertility, completely missing the extraordinary woman she was. He measured her worth by one biological function and threw away everything else. How many of us do this in our own relationships? Reduce people to their utility instead of seeing their humanity? Second, success without love is emptiness. Alexander got everything he thought he wanted. The perfect wife, the biological heir, the board's approval. And he was miserable, because legacy means nothing if you're building it alone, because money can't fill the void left by throwing away real connection. Third, real change requires consistent action, not grand gestures. Alexander didn't win Violet back with expensive gifts or dramatic declarations. He won her back by showing up every Saturday, by learning his children's favorite foods, by being present even when it was hard. Transformation happens in the daily choices, not the big moments. Fourth, forgiveness is powerful, but must be earned. Violet didn't take Alexander back because he apologized. She took him back because he proved over months that he'd actually changed, that his regret translated into different behavior. Forgiveness without accountability is just enabling. Fifth, sometimes we must be broken to be rebuilt stronger. Both Violet and Alexander had to lose everything to understand what mattered, had to face their own failures and fears, had to build themselves into better people before they could build a better relationship. The second version of their marriage was stronger because it was built on hard-won wisdom instead of naive assumptions. Sixth, family is about showing up, not just biology. Alexander contributed DNA, but Violet built a family. Through sleepless nights and financial struggles and fierce protective love. Family is made in the daily acts of care, not the biological connection. And finally, second chances are possible, but not guaranteed. They require both people to grow, to acknowledge mistakes, to choose differently. Not everyone who hurts you deserves another opportunity, but sometimes, when someone does the hard work of actual change, love can be rebuilt into something even stronger than before. Violet and Alexander's story reminds us that the best love stories aren't about perfect beginnings. They're about imperfect people who choose each other again and again, who face their failures and grow from them, who understand that real love requires more than feeling. It requires action and commitment and the daily choice to prioritize partnership over pride. So here's my question for you. Do you believe in second chances? Have you ever given someone another opportunity after they hurt you? Or have you been the one asking for forgiveness, trying to prove you've changed? Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one, and your experiences might help someone else navigating their own complicated relationship. If this story touched your heart, I need you to do something for me right now. Hit that like button. It tells YouTube to share this story with people who need to hear it, people who are struggling with forgiveness, people who are wondering if change is possible, people who need hope that broken things can be repaired. Subscribe to Billionaire Love Stories with Mr. Brad for more compelling narratives about love, loss, redemption, and the messy, beautiful reality of human relationships. We don't do fairy tales here. We do real stories about real emotions and the hard work of building lives worth living. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to choose differently, that people can change if they're willing to do the work, that forgiveness is possible when it's earned, that love, real love, is about so much more than perfect circumstances. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story, because every week we're bringing you narratives that will make you think, feel, and maybe see your own life a little differently. This is Mr. Brad, reminding you that the greatest architecture we'll ever design isn't buildings or businesses. It's the life we build with the people we love. Sometimes we have to tear everything down to the foundation. Sometimes we have to lose what we thought we wanted to find what we actually need. And sometimes, if we're very lucky and very brave, we get the chance to rebuild something broken into something beautiful. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for engaging with these stories and sharing your own. Thank you for believing that love, in all its complicated, messy glory, is always worth fighting for. Until next time, choose love, choose growth, choose the hard work of becoming someone worthy of the relationships you want. And remember, second chances are earned, not given. But when they're earned, they're worth everything.